Today we'll discuss the most incredible interrogation in Soviet history, which could have changed everything. Interrogation Protocol Number 1, compiled on October 12, 1947, began dryly, detained on Gorky Street for inappropriate appearance and incoherent speech. But within an hour, the case landed at Lubyanka in the hands of Major Ivan Nishev, a man whose career was built on seeing the hidden encountered what he didn't know. The detainee, who called himself Yevgeny Volnov, appeared to be 30, but his clothing and a strange black rectangle in his hand were otherworldly. MGB experts couldn't identify the materials or the object Volnov called a smartphone. He himself behaved not like an arrested man, but like someone in profound cognitive dissonance, speaking Russian with unfamiliar phrases, gadget, interface, online. Nishev saw him as either a madman or a sophisticated spy. Year of birth 1995, Volnov calmly replied to the question about his birth date. Nishev repeated, "Do you know what year it is? It should be 2025, Friday, July 18th, but clearly something went wrong," Volnov added, looking out the window. Nishev put down his pencil. The game had begun. Who could have prepared an agent with such a fantastic story? "Your story, Citizen Volnov, is untenable. It is 1947. "Stop this circus and start telling the truth," the major said icily. Volnov slowly turned his gaze to him. "You have no idea how wrong you are, and I have no idea how to explain to you what you cannot even imagine." He nodded at the smartphone. "It contains the entire library of humanity, all music, all films, communication with any point on the planet. And now it's just a piece of dead silicon and plastic because there are no networks, no satellites, not even a suitable charging outlet." Nishev remained silent, a madman, but a madman prepared by someone very serious. He pressed the selector button. "Summon Dr. Lazarev from the special department and tell the technicians to try to disassemble this object, very carefully." Dr. Lazarev, a psychiatrist with years of experience working with the MGB, conducted several sessions with Volnov. His conclusion was cautious but unequivocal. The subject does not exhibit classic signs of schizophrenia. His narrative is consistent, internally coherent. He demonstrates high intelligence, extensive knowledge in exact sciences, which, however, is interspersed with claims of a fantastic nature. This further confused Nishev. Experts attempting to disassemble the smartphone encountered the impossible. The casing material was so strong that tools simply scratched it. Under a microscope, they saw the finest threads and patterns, microelectronics brought to a level Soviet engineers couldn't even imagine. Nishev decided to change tactics. He began to listen. He ordered books on physics, chemistry, and history to be brought to Volnov. Volnov spoke of computers, machines capable of billions of calculations per second and fitting in the palm of your hand. He tried to explain to the major what a microprocessor was, how transistors worked, creating moving images and sound on a screen. Nishev listened and wrote. He didn't believe, but a vague, unsettling feeling began to grow in his soul. Volnov's stories were too detailed. He operated with terms, formulas, described technological processes that Soviet science had only the most distant theoretical understanding of. He drew the double helix of DNA and explained it was the carrier of genetic code. He spoke of moon flights as accomplished facts, of space stations, of telescopes peering into the farthest corners of the universe. He described weapons based on new physical principles, lasers, electromagnetic cannons, unmanned aerial vehicles. "Who is leading this race?" Nishev asked. Volnov gave a bitter smile. "Enemies, it's more complicated, Major. After World War II, there won't be a major hot war between superpowers. There will be another war, a cold one, an arms race, ideological confrontation." He spoke of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Vietnam War, Afghanistan, and each time he spoke of the Soviet Union in the past tense. "What do you mean was?" Nishev sharply asked. "Just that. I'm tired," Volnov replied. "In 1991, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics will cease to exist, without a single shot." Nishev looked at Volnov and for the first time in his career felt a sense of bewilderment. This was sacrilege, an assault on the very foundation of his worldview. "You are lying," he said hoarsely. "I wish I were lying," Volnov replied. "Believe me, the world that replaced yours is not paradise. It has its own problems, its own injustices, its own wars, but it is different." "There is one way to verify the truth of your words," Nishev said, looking the prisoner directly in the eye. "You must make a prediction, something significant, something we can verify soon." Volnov remained silent for a long time. Then he raised his eyes to Nishev. "All right, write this down. March 5, 1953. On this day your leader will die. Joseph Vissarionovich Stalin." Volnov's words fell into the silence of the office like a stone into still water. Nishev froze. Discussing fantastic technologies or the hypothetical collapse of the country in half a century is one thing. Naming the exact date of death of a man who, in the minds of millions, was not just a leader but a demigod, that's another. It was a death sentence passed on himself. Nishev slowly, almost mechanically, wrote the date in the protocol. His hand trembled slightly. After that, a power struggle will begin in the country between his closest associates, Beria, Malenkov, Khrushchev. Volnov continued, naming those at the pinnacle of power and referring to them as pawns in a future game whose outcome he already knows. Nishev sharply closed the folder. Interrogation concluded, he said, and left the office without looking at Volnov. That night the major didn't sleep. He smoked one cigarette after another and reread the protocol. The ravings of a madman in a sophisticated provocation. But why? What was the point of a provocation that could only be disproven in 6 years? Any spy counts on quick results. Here, this was a bet on the long term, too long term. He tried to find logic in the actions of those who might have sent Volnov, Americans. Sending an agent with an incredible legend packed with semi-fantastic information and one specific but very distant prediction. The agent ends up in the MGB. He's not shot because his knowledge, even if fictional, is of interest. He's kept in isolation, studied, years pass. And then in March 1953, nothing happens. Stalin is alive and well, the legend collapses. The agent is exposed as a liar. What's the benefit? But if Volnov is right? If his words about the collapse of the Union, about the internet, about moon flights turn out to be true, he will instantly gain monstrous weight. This man will transform from a prisoner into a prophet, and whoever controls him will hold an instrument of incredible power, knowledge of the future. This thought was so tempting and frightening that Nishev's breath caught. He realized that Volnov's case went far beyond a routine investigation. It became a matter of state security at the highest level. The next day, Nishev wrote a detailed report to the Minister of State Security, Viktor Abakumov. He presented all the facts, excerpts from protocols, expert and psychiatric conclusions. He made no conclusions, merely stated the anomaly of the situation. He particularly emphasized the potential value of the information the subject possessed, regardless of its veracity. He proposed creating a special interdisciplinary group to work with Volnov, comprising not only investigators but also leading scientists. He also strongly recommended transferring Volnov to a special, fully isolated facility outside Moscow. The reaction was immediate. 2 days later, Nishev was summoned by Abakumov. The minister was brief. Yevgeny Volnov was moved to one of the MGB's secret dachas in the Moscow region. Conditions were created for him that were starkly different from a prison cell. A spacious room with a good library, quality food, walks in a fenced yard. But it was a gilded cage. Interrogations ceased. Instead, conversations began. Academicians, luminaries of Soviet science came to him. They didn't try to catch him in a lie. They, like Nishev, simply listened and recorded. He spoke of string theory, dark matter, the Higgs boson, things that for physicists in 1947 were mere vague hypotheses. He explained to engineers the principles of semiconductors, fiber optics, navigation. He told historians about the decolonization of Africa, the rise of China, European integration. He became a living encyclopedia of the future for them. The main custodian and interpreter of this knowledge was Major Nishev. He was the only one who knew everything. He systematized information, compiled analytical notes, tried to separate the wheat from the chaff. He became Volnov's shadow, his only constant interlocutor. And the more he interacted with the source, the more he changed. His official pragmatism gave way to something new, a mixture of fear, curiosity, and almost mystical awe before the abyss of time that opened up. He was still waiting for March 1953. That date became his starting point, the moment of truth. Years passed, 1948, 1949, 1950. The country was recovering from the war, building new factories, testing its first atomic bomb, and only at one secret facility near Moscow did time flow differently. Here in a hermetic world, the source of the future had already arrived. For the select few, the world was no longer the same. They lived in two realities simultaneously. Yevgeny Volnov changed, replaced by a quiet, deep melancholy. He understood he would never return home. He was a Robinson on an island of time, and his Fridays were the uniformed and civilians eagerly catching every word. He cooperated because it was the only way to survive and maintain his sanity. Nishev, by then a lieutenant colonel, was the only one with whom Volnov had developed a relationship remotely resembling human connection. Their conversations had long gone beyond protocol. They spoke not only of science and politics, but also of life, people, and what remains constant in any era. Nishev, without realizing it, began to see Volnov not just as a source, but as a person. He saw his longing for a world that no longer existed. One evening, Volnov asked, "Grigorievich, you try to peer into the future using me as a telescope, but you don't understand the main thing. Your system will collapse not due to a civilization loss or military defeat. It will collapse under the weight of its own inefficiency, ideological stagnation, and inability to give people what they need, not just bread, but freedom." 1953 was approaching. Tension mounted. Nishev became even more withdrawn and sharp. He understood that his career and possibly his life was at stake. If the prediction didn't come true, he would be accused of misleading the country's top leadership for 6 years. March 5, 1953. Volnov was off by only a few days, or was he? He spoke of the date of death, not the onset of illness. Nishev ordered the facility's security to be maximized. He entered Volnov's room. The latter sat on the bed, staring at the wall. Is he sick? Volnov asked quietly. Yes, Nishev replied just as quietly. Cerebral hemorrhage? Volnov asked. Yes, Nishev confirmed. His voice no longer held skepticism or doubt. Only a dull, stunned acknowledgement of fact. They sat in silence for several hours. Two men from different eras, bound by an incredible secret, waited for history to take its course. In the evening of March 5, a second coded message arrived. The leader's heart has stopped. Nishev slowly folded the paper and put it in his pocket. He looked at Volnov. The latter covered his face with his hands. Nishev couldn't understand what it was: relief, grief, or fear. He walked to the desk, picked up a clean sheet of paper and a pencil. Tell me, he said hoarsely, tell me everything, about Khrushchev, about the 20th Congress, about Gagarin's flight, about everything. At that moment, Major of State Security Ivan Grigorievich Nishev finally ceased to be a skeptic. He became a believer, and his god, his prophet, was this strange, sad man from the future, locked in a gilded cage. The death of Stalin and the subsequent power struggle, which unfolded exactly according to Volnov's scenario, had a stunning impact on the select few. Lavrentiy Beria was arrested and shot. Nikita Khrushchev gradually pushed Georgy Malenkov out of power. Every new event reported by the newspapers only confirmed the words of the source. The Source project received an unprecedented secrecy classification. It was now personally overseen by Nikita Khrushchev. Nishev became the guru, promoted to colonel and gaining unofficial status as one of the most influential men in the country. He was the sole channel of communication between the Source and the USSR leadership. The group of scientists working with Volnov was expanded. A quiet, unnoticed technological revolution began. Based on Volnov's accounts of semiconductors and microchips, Soviet physicists began accelerated research in solid-state electronics. The computer project received unlimited funding. Volnov couldn't provide ready-made blueprints. He was a theorist, but he set the direction. He described the end result, operating principles, materials. He was their guiding star. He spoke of satellite communication and global positioning principles. The idea of launching an artificial moon, a relay, into orbit became the basis for the Soviet space program. Sergei Korolev, a brilliant designer, upon gaining access to some adapted ideas from the source, without knowing their origin, was amazed by the boldness and governmental nature of the proposed concepts. The launch of the first satellite in 1957 and Yuri Gagarin's flight in 1961 were not only triumphs of Soviet engineering thought, but also indirect results of the conversations held in the secret bunker near Moscow. Nishev became the priest of this new cult, the cult of the future. He meticulously questioned Volnov about all aspects of the coming decades, but this knowledge was also a curse. Firstly, it was incomplete. Secondly, the problem of the temporal paradox arose. The Soviet system, having received a warning about its future collapse, only tried to strengthen its foundations, using future technologies to preserve the past. He felt complicit in what he had always opposed. His health deteriorated. Years of complete isolation, constant psychological pressure, and the realization of his role in this monstrous game wore him down from within. He aged faster than he should have. Nishev saw these changes and felt something akin to compassion. He was the only one who understood the depth of this man's tragedy. In the mid-60s, Volnov said, "Your system will collapse not due to a civilization loss or military defeat. It will collapse under the weight of its own inefficiency, ideological stagnation, and inability to give people what they need, not just bread but freedom." And Nishev, looking at the aging leadership, the growing apathy in society, realized with horror that the source was right. The system was untreatable. It had become mummified, outwardly gleaming with rockets and Olympic construction, but inwardly dead. He understood that knowledge of the future had not saved them. It had only turned them into sighted people walking towards an abyss, unable to turn away. The Brezhnev era, which Volnov characterized as the era of stagnation, became a time of routine for the Source project. The country's leadership took future information for granted, like another resource. The main focus shifted to the practical application of Volnov's knowledge for solving current tactical problems. By the early 70s, Yevgeny Alexandrovich himself had become a shadow of his former self. He no longer argued or tried to prove anything. He had turned into a talking machine, a database. Colonel Nishev had also aged. He was one of the most informed and influential people in the USSR, but his power was illusory, invisible. He was the keeper of a secret that gradually consumed him from within. He saw the country he loved and served his whole life slowly moving towards the collapse predicted by Volnov. Knowledge from the future had not become a panacea. It had become a doping that temporarily gave strength to a decaying organism, but ultimately only accelerated its destruction. The The war in Afghanistan became another tragic milestone. Volnov had warned about it. Nishev reported this to the top, but the Politburo decided otherwise. They were wrong. The prediction came true with horrifying accuracy. During one of their last meetings, Volnov said, "Grigorievich, knowledge of the future is useless if you lack the will and wisdom to use it correctly. You are like a man given a detailed map of a minefield, but he walks straight through it anyway." His health became critical. His body, born in the late 20th century, was not adapted to the food, ecology, or medical preparations of the mid-century. But the main reason, as Nishev understood, was not this. Time was killing him. His existence was thinning out as he remained in an era that did not belong to him. He was a living source that was drying up. The official medical report cited general multiple organ failure due to progressive nervous system exhaustion as the cause of death. Nishev personally oversaw the cremation. The ashes of Yevgeny Volnov, the man from 2025, were scattered over the Moscow region forest, near the very dacha that had served as his prison for almost 40 years. The Source project was officially closed. All documentation was archived with the annotation "Eternal." Nishev wrote his final report and retired in 1985. He watched Perestroika, Glasnost, the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan on television. He saw the Berlin Wall fall, and in August 1991 he watched the red flag being lowered over the Kremlin. Everything had come true, to the smallest detail. He felt no malice or satisfaction, only a heavy, leaden fatigue. He was the only person in the world who knew that all of this had been predetermined. He died in 1994, taking with him the most incredible secret of the 20th century. He never knew that a few years later, amidst the chaos of the 90s, a young KGB officer, while sorting through old KGB archives, would stumble upon a strange, unique folder marked Top Secret, a single copy. In this folder, he would find interrogation protocols of a man claiming to have arrived from 2025, and he would find a small black rectangle of glass and metal that had been stored for decades in the Special Evidence Department as an unidentified object. The story is not over yet. It's just waiting for its moment to surface from the depths of the archives and revolutionize the new generation's understanding of time, history, and human destiny.